let me just tell everyone welcome. Lindsay. Lindsay and I actually went to high school together. And so we've known each other for a long time. But Lindsay is the host of the popular dating podcast, We Met at Acme. And she also does personal dating for coaching. And she does a lot of different, she's involved with astrology, and she hosts a lot of different panels, and she's amazing. So we're so happy to have her with us today. And we're just going to get going with all these questions we have. How would you start the dating process?
You mean like the process of with already someone in particular, or to find someone?
To find somebody, and then also to find somebody. Let's start with that.
I would say, honestly, even though it seems like you need to start by, looking for that person, I think you actually have to start by working on yourself and figuring out what you have to offer to that person, and kind of like, doing the work on yourself to be self-aware and be able to be happy alone. And that's how I think that you should start.
Okay. Great. And so, especially now with COVID and virtual dating, if someone's ready, where would you suggest that they go to, whether it be apps, dating sites?
Mm-hmm.
So
definitely dating apps. And, right now with COVID, there's not a lot of places to go. So I would suggest, maybe a restaurant outside, socially distanced, but even then, it's still kind of hard to meet. So I think apps are the safest bet right now.
Okay. And as we know, there's all these different apps, whether it be Hinge, whether it be Bumble,
Mm-hmm.
and so forth, and Match and all of that. How can you keep yourself safe during this time when you meet somebody socially distant? Being socially distanced from somebody, when it comes to, obviously being intimate, outside.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, you just have to have an open conversation about what's going on with COVID, and did they have it? Have they been tested? What have they been doing? And I think that you shouldn't, just let someone kiss you in these times unless you've had that conversation.
Right. Okay. Makes sense. Yeah. You want to make sure that they haven't been exposed, and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when should somebody who has a disability or a difference disclose to the person that they're dating they have a disability?
Yeah.
They don't know already.
In my opinion, I would say whenever you're comfortable disclosing that information. So if it's something that you feel might be a burden for this person, I would, even though it shouldn't be, and you shouldn't feel that way, but if that's something that you do feel, you should wait until you have a connection established, and then maybe say it. And I would say that with any kind of, big thing, like if you have an autoimmune disease, or, God forbid you lost a parent, you should wait until you feel comfortable and you feel that there's already something between you guys. Because if there isn't, then this person could easily think, oh, well, I don't really have feelings for her anyway yet, and this seems like a lot for me, so I'm going to hit the road, as opposed to them being like, well, I see that she's really amazing, or he's really amazing, so, of course I'm not going to go anywhere, even though they said X, Y, and Z.
Right. And what would be an example of how you phrase telling somebody in a non-judgmental way, in a way that also doesn't freak the other person out, especially if they don't have a difference or a disability?
Yeah. Well, let's use Lyme disease, for example. I would say, hey, I know we're having a great time, and, I'm really enjoying this date. but I just want you to know something about me that I haven't shared with you yet. And, even though I'm here and like have energy now, there are times when I don't have energy, and there are times when I need to be at home and I need to recharge my batteries, and I don't have the same amount of like functionality that you might have. And I really, hope that that's something that isn't a deal breaker for you. Because if it is, then we need to, that needs to be addressed. And, I think just don't like put yourself down in any way. Like, you don't have to say, I know that I'm like not as smart, or I know that I'm like slower at this. No, like just say, listen, like this is something about me that you should know, and I just wanted you to be aware of it, and before we move forward.
Right. And hopefully the other person can accept that. And if they can't accept that, then there's the possibility that it's not the right person.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Somebody just asked, how many dates would you say would be the appropriate amount before you get into a monogamous official relationship with somebody?
I don't think it's so much the amount of dates, but more like how well you feel like you know each other, which usually comes at around 2 to 3 months, sometimes before. But I think you need to spend enough time with one another. If we have to put a number on it, I would say, I don't know, between 10 and 15 dates, maybe.
Okay. Yeah. And it's hard because some people, I feel like after the third or fourth date, people, or at least me, we kind of forget how many dates we've been on, and it comes into months and so forth. Perfect. I hope that answers the anonymous attendee's question. So another person asked, what would you do if the person you're talking to is resistant to getting tested?
That's really tough, because I don't see why they would be resistant. And if they really want to go out with you and that's something that you asked of them and they won't do it, that's kind of indicative of like how they might act in the future. So I would say that's like a deal breaker. But that's a really good question. I feel like I should ask it as a poll question on our Instagram.
Go for it. Okay. And now for people that are dating virtually, specifically now, clearly, or also like in the future, once we're out of COVID, what would be some like first general like date spots to go to, and then as well as activities for virtual dating?
Yeah, I would say if you're able to socially distanced date in person, you should go to restaurants that have outdoor seating. So there's tons in like the West Village and in Soho and all over right now. So I would do that. And what was the second part of the question?
So the second part were the activities, and then the first, and then dating spots.
Yeah. So, go to somewhere that has outdoor seating, and then same with that, activities. You can go on a walk together. You can have a picnic in the park. You can try new restaurants that are available, outside. You can, you can travel if you know each other well enough. At that point, if you've been on a couple of dates, you can rent a car and go somewhere local. You can take like day trips. Like there's really nice different sites to see in like upstate New York. So those are all things like you can, while you're up there, go on a hike, or you can just take like a walk in the neighborhood. I think that's always like a good idea. And if you have enough to talk to with that person, you don't have to be doing too many things.
Right. That totally makes sense. Now, when it comes to physical differences as it relates to sex, how should you approach that subject? Clearly, that's different than just having a disability that doesn't really affect intimate life.
Yeah, I think if your disability affects your sex life, that's definitely something that you should talk about when you're ready to have sex. And I don't know, I'm not a doctor, but I imagine that there are always ways to pleasure each other. And so maybe just explain what those ways are for you, because disability or not, everyone is different about sex and everyone has their things that they like done and not done. So I think it's a very normal conversation to have when you're ready to be intimate with that person.
Right. Perfect. And then, so, and this is getting a little bit into it, but do you think sex toys are a good, I guess, compensatory strategy, specifically if somebody has a physical difference? I mean, clearly anyone can use sex toys, but what do you think of that as, a potential, option?
I think that's a great option. And I think that there are so many resources and products out there for people who like to perceive pleasure differently and who do receive it differently. And I think there's no shame in using sex toys, disabilities or not. So it's a great option. I agree with you.
And for people that may not know, what are some like good sites to go and,
Hmm.
get?
I think it's called Lovers Stores or
Okay.
loverstore.com. And then there's there's toys by Dame products that are really good. And I think there's a toy called like Lelo, Lelo, that people really like. So I would look into those.
Okay. Go for it, everyone. That's interested. Okay, so do you think in this time with virtual dating that it's possible to find true love?
Yeah, I think it's always possible to find true love. Love is everywhere around us, and I think the belief in love is really beautiful. And, you'd be surprised as to how many people have maybe already met the person that they will eventually love. And so I think if you're open to it, it will definitely find you. And love is definitely still out there and very real.
Yeah, and so from your experiences witnessing tons of virtual love and so forth, what have you seen out there during these crazy few months that we've been dealing with and are still dealing with?
I've seen a lot. I've seen relationships get stronger. I've seen people get married, just the two of them. I've seen, because there can't be real weddings, I've seen people break up and, people realize after spending this much time together that they're not happy. And I think Corona has kind of sped everything up, meaning like sped it up. If you were going to break up with someone, now you really are going to. And if you wanted to be serious with someone, now you're also really going to.
Right, of course. And yeah, there's small gatherings for weddings, there's virtual weddings.
Yeah.
And so forth. Okay, somebody just asked if your partner wants to help you with things that you don't want help with, how should you approach that subject? For this person, as she's disabled, it's hard to set boundaries with people that care about her or him.
Yeah. That's tough because I'm sure they're just coming from a really good place and they truly don't know that they're doing anything other than helping. But I would say, listen, I appreciate so much that you are so willing to help me and that you're so there for me. But for me personally, I feel like, I want to maintain my sense of independence and your help is not something that I need. But if it is, I will tell you. So just know that if I need you, I'll make that clear. And for right now, I don't need help with, X, Y, and Z.
Okay. Now, if there is something that's something with your body that you feel insecure about, and has affected your romantic relationships, how do you move past that and present that to somebody?
Yeah. I think that you shouldn't really like give it legs and focus on it too much, because the more you do, the more it's going to be a bigger thing. If, let's say it's your stomach, then keep a shirt on. Like that's totally fine. And hopefully your partner is emotionally intelligent enough to know that there's a reason that you're doing that. And then when you're ready, you can talk about it. If, you're insecure about your feet, then wear socks. Like you don't have to, make it such like a big thing in the beginning. Like, you can just get to it again, like when you feel comfortable.
Right. No, I think that's great advice. I mean, I would do the same if that was affecting me. So speech impaired individuals clearly have a hard time finding love. I do know somebody personally that is significantly speech impaired and has found true love. But is it possible, generally speaking, to find true love if you're speech impaired? And, what are some ideas to go about that when trying to find somebody?
Yeah, I think it's totally possible. And I think, if it were me and I were speech impaired, I would put that on my dating profile. I'd be like, FYI, I have a lisp or I have a stutter, and like, I hope, you're aware of that. Like, don't swipe right unless it's okay with you,
Right.
because I wouldn't want to like get on that date and that person to be like, oh my God, like you have a speech impediment, or like I wouldn't want them to be mean in any type of way. I want to say, this is me. And if you want that, great. If not, like keep it moving.
Right. And so when it comes to looking for somebody, what are some things, obviously it varies from person to person, that somebody should look out for in a partner to kind of get the sense that maybe this person is the right person or not? Again, I know it's varied and everyone has different
Yeah.
preferences and so forth, but just like generally speaking,
Yeah.
across what you've seen.
It's interesting because I always was told that it would be easy with the right person. And I was like, what does that mean? I don't know. But I definitely do believe that. And I think it really is easy when you do find someone that has the potential to be your person. You don't have to like prove it to your family that they're great or prove it to your friends. Like everyone just sees that you're happy and everyone gets along like copacetically. I think that they are someone that you admire when when it's right, and you want to be more like them, and you think they're great, and like they think you're great, and that's at least how it should be in like the first few years until you have like any real hardship between you. Like you should really you should want to do things for that person and like really be grateful for them.
Yeah, I think being grateful for somebody is especially important, and somebody that also is reciprocal, because otherwise I don't know how you could have a relationship if they're not reciprocal. So how does somebody who is typical, hold on, yeah, okay, so how does a couple, when one person is typical and the other person has a difference, how do you deal with the stigma of the other person? This person is scared that if she gets into the situation, she will face prejudice.
Well, we're always going to face prejudice of some kind because we're all inherently prejudiced in one way or another. So I would say, as tough as it is, you have to be prepared for that no matter what. Someone could not like you for whatever reason. Maybe it's because you're Jewish. Maybe it's because you're short. Maybe it's because you're tall. Maybe, it's because of your disability, because you have freckles, whatever it is. And that's their problem. It's not yours. So you know that you know your worth, your partner knows your worth, and you come up with a way of handling these people, whether that's in therapy or you and your partner figure it out together. And that's it. Because, there's always going to be someone with a negative opinion. And unfortunately, that's the world that we live in. And people have the right to their opinions, and there's not much we can do about it. So you just have to figure out a way to react to it that means that, works for you.
Right. And obviously, if there's lots of prejudice, and you clearly know that can be a con or a negative indicator that the person is not right for you. So if somebody has a fetish, can they find love with somebody who shares the love of their fetish, say leather?
If someone has a fetish,
can they find? Yeah. It's an interesting question.
I'm sure there are I'm sure there are dating apps or websites related to fetishes. They should look into that.
Okay. Now, another person asked, if somebody has a facial difference that makes them look different from most people, how would you go about weeding out dating partners who are less superficial? And then are there certain sites that are more appropriate for these types of people?
Well, again, it's like, put yourself out there on the dating app, and if they have a problem with it, they won't swipe that they're interested, and usually if they can look past it, they will swipe that they're interested. I think there are different dating apps. I think you and I had talked about one. I forgot the name, but it was like different.
Is it the one where basically you helped me match with certain people?
Yeah, exactly. It's like based on your disability. I think you could just
and then there was that one, right? Exactly.
Yeah, that's the one I was talking about. But there are specific dating sites for people with disabilities. So if you want to feel more comfortable, you can use those. But if you're using like the mainstream ones like Hinge and Bumble and Tinder, just you can say, especially Hinge asks you like prompts. You could say, I have a facial disability, like ask me about it, just don't be afraid to share your truth.
Right. No, I would agree. So I know you're open about it, but yes, you don't drink, neither do I, and so you can tell us what your favorite is, but if you don't drink, what would be a good mocktail to have?
Interesting. I don't really do mocktails. I'm more of a Diet Coke girl,
okay.
But if I did, I would probably do a virgin pina colada.
Okay. That sounds really good. Perfect. So some people who have disabilities, their body gets fetished. And so how do you tell if a person that's interested in you, for you, versus just your disability?
I think you can always tell based on how they treat you, but also like how they act when you're around different people and like with their family, with your family, with their friends. And, hopefully you'll be able to discern like who has good intentions and who doesn't. And especially like when you're, not in the bedroom, you'll like based on how they act towards you in that way. I think that's important.
Okay. Now we're going to get personal. I know you do talk a little bit about your own dating life and relationships. So you've had obviously tons of experience yourself with dating, and you have a boyfriend right now who's absolutely adorable. Someone's asking, so how have you found like confidence in your own, dating life?
Yeah. Well, it definitely wasn't easy. Like I had to, as they say, kiss a lot of frogs.
Right.
And I was hurt tons of times in past relationships. And I think when I found confidence without a relationship and didn't define myself by being in one and really did work on myself and, got sober and was in therapy and realized what I had to offer, then I stopped looking for that in other people. So for example, I was always looking for someone who was funny and this and that. And I realized that I had those qualities inside me. And so I didn't need someone to have those to like complete me. And it was only when I started to have those realizations that I started to find the right person for me.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm very excited for you. So you've gone, and people that follow your Instagram, which is We Met at Acme. Recently, you have spoken about texting rules. Can you just share a few of them, whether it be for a first date, whether it be after a first date, even if, and when you're in a relationship? What are just some rules to go by?
Yeah. Well, that I say after a first date not to say thank you again if you've already thanked them. I would say, and I'm like a big stickler for this one, always ask a question back, because otherwise the conversation dies and, they don't know what to say. So always ask a conversation back. And, other than that, I think maybe like for women, I personally don't feel comfortable initiating texts until I have like some kind of, confidence around the relationship. So I would just say that, and be positive in your text, and be, interesting and lighthearted and funny, and don't take it too seriously.
Right. And what do you think about initiation from a woman to a man?
Same as I mentioned before, I think it shouldn't really happen until you are official. I personally like the idea of like a man pursuing me, but everyone is different.
Right. Of course. Now, what if you are a typical person that has a family member with a disability? How do you know when your partner is ready to meet your family?
I would say, it's definitely something that you should tell them about before they meet your family, so that they are able to be understanding and sensitive to it. Maybe you have, someone in your family who has Tourette syndrome, and so you need to tell your partner, this person might have movements that they can't control, or verbal things that they can't control. And so I want you to be aware of that before we go meet them. And I don't want, you to be freaked out. They're a normal person. They understand, they feel, etc. This is just, my brother, or whatever it is. And I think that once that is done, then they're ready to meet the person, because they are understanding of it and, aware of it, and will likely, be great about it.
Right. And I think it's safe to say that, everyone has something, and it's,
Totally.
Everyone has something. And, as you grow up, specifically, when you get into college and, obviously being an adult, there shouldn't, even though obviously sometimes there is, be a stigma around somebody having a disability. I mean, there's so many people, obviously, which I preach, with different and able, that have differences, but are so able in so many other ways. It could be mental health, it can be physical. I mean, and it's, from my standpoint, I always think it's a good thing to really kind of embrace the person. And because they're still a person, and they deserve to be treated, appropriately. But clearly, obviously, it's every situation and person is kind of different. So when somebody is dating somebody, or when somebody's trying to find true love and the one, clearly there's a whole gamut of when people, find their actual person. But just generally speaking, like, what do you think, like, the time frame is of somebody, like, starting the dating process and then, like, finding somebody? Like, I don't know, are there statistics out there on that?
I don't know the statistics, but I would say, I don't know, people say third time's the charm. People, say that when you turn 30, you know yourself well enough to kind of know what you want. So I would say it's probably just something that happens with age, and like what you learn about yourself.
And so when we talk about dating apps, I know you and I separately have spoken about dating apps that are specific to people with disabilities. But what are some dating apps that you know of that maybe are not just the general Hinge? Let's see, yeah, Hinge, Plenty of Fish, Bumble, The League, that people can go to find true love.
I like Coffee Meets Bagel. I think there's an app called Ship that's good. There's a new app called S'more. And yeah, I think there's so many dating apps that are, starting up all the time. And it's great to try out a new dating app. There's OkCupid. I think they have an app now, which is great. J-Swipe if you're Jewish, like Christian Mingle if you're a Christian, all of those kinds of sites as well.
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot out there. I think now most people, and I don't know what the statistics are, but, find true love. I mean, on dating apps, it's obviously not the case for every single person, but
Right.
become the norm. All right. What if you're in a relationship already with someone you love, but the pandemic is causing stress? There are so many people, obviously, who are disabled and who are vulnerable to COVID, and they might be dealing with loved ones who are overprotective. And so how do you manage this whole pandemic and, your fear of the other person because you have a, disability?
Yeah, I would say like lots of relationships are going through stress right now, especially with the pandemic. So I would say, just make sure that your partner is really sensitive to your disability, especially in a time like the pandemic, because the last thing you'd want to do is get sick with COVID and on top of, feeling like you have something you're already dealing with. So they need to be mindful of that and respectful.
Right. Of course. And it's unfortunately with COVID that people are dealing with all of these, co-lying conditions,
Yeah.
When they have a disability. Okay. So, so how for dating profile specifically, should you profile your picture and reveal your difference if you're able to conceal it, or should you lead with it?
I would lead with it. It shows that you're confident and you're not trying to hide anything.
Okay. And what are some things that are good to use on your profile on a dating app to really intrigue somebody? I know you and I have discussed this personally.
Yeah. I think just be funny and interesting and be yourself. But it's important to have a sense of humor about it and not take it too seriously, because people will be able to tell if you're like, I'm looking for marriage. That's too serious. You want to get to know people, and you have to think of it as like meeting a new friend.
Right. No, of course. And, what are some things, I know specifically one, if you're going on a road trip, you and I have discussed, for everyone who's watching, clearly you know that Lindsay does coaching with me. But for people, so like typical responses. So I know one is, if you stopped at a gas station, what 3 things would you get? But what are some other great responses to open up with, specifically on sites such as Bumble or Hinge, where sometimes you, as the woman, have to initiate? Or even for a guy too. I mean,
yeah, I would just say like ask someone a question, like what's your favorite sandwich, or Diet Coke or regular Coke, or just like anything that you've ever debated with your friends. Ask this person, because I'm sure they have an opinion on it. Waffles or pancakes.
Right, of course. Now, a lot of people, going back to kind of the pandemic, are dealing with mental health difficulties. Do you think they should just wait to date, or if you're feeling depressed, should you just try to get out of the rut by going and finding love?
Yeah, I think if you are feeling depressed, you should talk to a professional about it and try to seek the help that you need. And there's nothing more important than your mental health. So I would say only after you feel good mentally should you try to date.
Okay. So a lot of relationships, talking about mental health, people that are bipolar specifically, tend to get into, from my experience, find it very difficult to date. And sometimes it can lead to many breakups or divorce. And, how would you manage that diagnosis in a relationship?
Yeah, I know tons of people who are in relationships with people who suffer from bipolar disorder. And I think it's really manageable because there is medication that you can take, first of all. And, same as any disability or any, different ability, you just have to tell your partner. Listen, there are moments where I will, be very sad, and there are moments where I'll be very happy, or, however your disorder affects you. And if I'm going through that moment, we just need to ride it out, and I'll get back to, feeling good again. But this is just something that I deal with. And, like anything else, I hope that you can handle it.
Right. No, of course. And what are some signs that indicate somebody is being taken advantage of?
Yeah, I would say if like they're only kind of, interested in sex, or they are always asking for you to pay for things, or they, are exploiting your disability on social media. Like, look, I'm dating someone who's disabled, and making you feel uncomfortable. Like, those are signs.
Okay. And when it comes specifically to money, and, typically, usually the man pays specifically the first few times, because ideally it's always nice for the guy to courtship the woman. When do you find it to be appropriate for a woman to pay, whether it be for a celebration, a birthday, or, just kind of, offer, or, your appreciation?
Yeah, I think it's really nice, like once in a while, for the woman to pop in and pay for something, like maybe the seventh date or something, just to take care of it, like not to try to split it, but just to pay for it, or like to pay for, if you stop and get a drink somewhere, like something smaller. I think that that's really nice and appreciated.
Right. Yeah, I totally would agree. And I think that also comes with even gifts, especially early on. Obviously it's different once you get into a relationship.
Right.
It's more about before you become official.
Right.
So for virtual dating, what are some of the pros and the cons?
For virtual dating, I would say the pros are that you get to know each other without the physical intimacy, so you connect on an emotional level. And I would say the cons are that you don't get to meet in person.
Right. And yeah, it's the hardest thing these days. I mean, everyone's at home, and it's, like I said, it's difficult. So going back actually to the question about payment, somebody just wanted to know, how many dates should a guy ideally be paying for in the beginning? Should it be after the 6th date, the 7th date? Like, what do you think's the right range?
I think you have to pay until you're official. But that doesn't mean that I don't think that you should, pop in and try to take it over one night, but they should be prepared to pay.
Right. Okay. No, I mean, that's the sign of, like, a great, like, first relationship.
Yeah.
And yeah. What do you think about long distance dating, especially in the beginning stages? Is that something that's, very successful? Is it something that, probably ideally it's not necessarily going to work? Obviously, once you're, in a relationship with somebody, that's a different, it's a whole different course. But specifically, in the beginning stages.
Yeah, I think long distance dating can definitely work. You just have to uh, be really good at communicating with one another. That's kind of it, And if you can do that, then I don't see why it wouldn't work out to date long distance.
Yeah, me too. I mean, obviously, there's travel and, ideally post the pandemic. But, long distance, I mean, can work for some people, clearly. Somebody asked if you're a heterosexual guy who wants to show a woman you're interested, but you can't afford to pay for many expensive dates, how should you go about that?
If you're a heterosexual guy and you want to show you're interested, but you can't pay for many dates,
Right.
then you can do creative things. You don't have to take them to a nice restaurant every time. You can go grab a drink. You can have a picnic. You can get sandwiches and walk around. You can go on a hike together. There are tons of ways to show that you're interested without having to, spend a ton of money.
Right. No, I mean, yeah, of course. I mean, not everyone, has the money to do X, Y, and Z. And I think even, going to like lavish restaurants is not really the heart of, finding a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever feel like men expect something in return if they pay for so many dates?
If they do, that's not the man for you.
Okay. And, specifically this person said that it's so hard to meet guys who don't expect you to pay, by the second date.
You should always offer, but that doesn't mean that you should always pay.
Right. But do you think like it's a no if on the first date somebody asks to pay? If a guy asks?
Yes, for me it would be a deal breaker for sure.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. What are some, inexpensive, like, type restaurants would be, suitable for somebody who, can't afford a lot?
I think there are tons of inexpensive restaurants. There's like casual Mexican places and random sushi places all over the city. And there are, there are restaurants, there are pizza places that you could go to. You can go to Joe's Pizza. I think you can cook, if you've gone on a few dates and you feel comfortable doing that. So I think there's a lot more inexpensive restaurants than people think.
And now, when should you go to the other person's house? How many dates should it be after a first date? Should it be after a second date? And then what are your quote unquote guidelines for when you have the first time you have sex with that person?
I think that you should only go to their apartment when you're comfortable doing so. So if that is, if that means the third date, great. If it means the sixth or seventh date, that's fine too. And I think, you should really only, go to someone's apartment when you're ready to kind of like take that next step. Mm-hmm. And I think that in terms of sex, like for me, I don't want to have sex with someone until I feel comfortable with them, which, is very often times after maybe 10 dates. I think it's totally different for everyone. And it's like whenever you feel comfortable.
Right. Yeah, I think, every person is different. I mean, that's what makes us all human.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with it. So I guess kind of in closing, what advice would, give generally to anyone who's frustrated with the dating process, who kind of is like hopeless right now of
Right.
dating or in finding their true love?
I would say don't give up. Like the person that's looking for exactly what you have to offer is out there and you will find them. So don't give up and focus on making yourself happy before relying on anyone else to do that.
Great advice. I think we're going to wrap it up. I think we've answered
Awesome.
all of these
Thank
questions.
you so much, Allie. This was great.
Yes. And